Lightning split the darkened sky as Karim Al-Fayed gripped the steering wheel of his Bentley Continental. Rain lashed against the windshield with such fury that even the luxury sedan's premium wipers struggled to maintain visibility. Sighing deeply, Karim adjusted his custom-tailored suit jacket and checked his platinum watch, another delayed meeting with investors. At 42, he had built an empire that spanned continents, yet satisfaction remained elusive. The empty streets of downtown reflected in puddles of rainwater when something caught his eye. A small figure huddled against a storefront. Instinctively, Karim nearly drove past. Other people's problems weren't his concern. This philosophy had served him well throughout his ascent from modest beginnings to unimaginable wealth. "Just keep driving," he muttered to himself, but his foot eased off the accelerator. The figure was a child, a little girl no more than 7 years old, clutching a worn teddy bear. Her dark hair hung in wet strands against her face, and despite the rain, tears were distinguishable on her cheeks. Something about her large, expressive eyes penetrated the carefully constructed walls around Karim's heart. Against his better judgment, he pulled the Bentley to the curb and lowered the passenger window. "Are you lost?" he called out, his voice softer than usual. The girl looked up, startled. "I'm waiting for my mama," she answered in a small voice. "She said she'd come back." Karim scanned the empty street. "How long have you been waiting?" "Since the sun was up there?" She pointed vaguely toward the sky, now pitch black with storm clouds. An uncomfortable feeling settled in Karim's chest. "Hours, then." He drummed his fingers on the steering wheel, calculating the fastest way to extricate himself from this situation. Call the authorities. Drop her at a shelter. His phone buzzed with messages from his assistant. The investors were growing impatient. "Where did your mother go?" he asked finally. "To sell her candles and boxes at the market," the girl replied, hugging her teddy bear tighter. But then the rain came and she didn't come back. Something in her innocent trust broke through Karim's practiced indifference. With a reluctant sigh, he reached across and opened the passenger door. "Come in out of the rain, we'll find your mother." The girl hesitated, clutching her teddy bear. "I'm not supposed to go with strangers," she said, but her shivering betrayed her desperate need for warmth and shelter. "My name is Karim," he offered. "Now I'm not a stranger." After a moment's deliberation, the girl climbed into the luxury vehicle, her soaked clothes immediately dampening the handcrafted leather seats. Karim winced but said nothing. "What's your name?" he asked, turning up the heat. "Sophia," she whispered, her eyes wide as she took in the car's opulent interior. "And this is Mr. Buttons," she added, holding up the bedraggled teddy bear. "Pleased to meet you both," Karim replied, surprising himself with his gentleness. "Let's get you somewhere warm and dry, and then we'll find your mother." He drove to T, the Grand Peninsula Hotel, where he owned the penthouse suite. The doorman's eyebrows shot up at the sight of Karim escorting a bedraggled child through the marble lobby, but one stern look silenced any questions. In his suite, Karim awkwardly searched for appropriate clothes for Sophia, eventually settling on one of his t-shirts, which hung like a dress on her tiny frame. He ordered hot chocolate and soup from room service, then sat across from her, utterly out of his element. "Do you know your mother's name?" he asked, as Sophia sipped her chocolate, leaving a mustache on her upper lip. "Elena Vasquez," Sophia answered, suddenly looking worried. "Will she be angry that I'm here?" "No," Karim assured her, though he had no idea. "We'll find her first thing tomorrow." "The Central Market, you said?" Sophia nodded, her eyelids growing heavy. Within minutes, she was asleep on the plush sofa, Mr. Buttons tucked securely under her arm. Karim paced the suite, ignoring the dozens of messages on his phone. What had possessed him to bring this child to his hotel? He could have, should have called social services. Yet something about her vulnerability had stirred memories of his own childhood struggles before his father's business took off, of what it felt like to be small and powerless in a world of adults who didn't see you. The next morning, Sophia eagerly led him through the bustling Central Market. Vendors hawked everything from fresh produce to handcrafted jewelry, the air thick with the scent of street food and incense. "There," Sophia suddenly cried, pointing toward a modest stall displaying intricately carved wooden boxes and hand-poured candles. Behind the counter stood a woman in her early 30s, her face drawn with exhaustion and worry. When she spotted Sophia, her expression transformed into pure relief, followed immediately by suspicion as she noticed Karim in his designer clothes. "Sophia! Gracias a Dios!" Elena rushed forward, embracing her daughter tightly before fixing Karim with a guarded stare. "Who are you? Where did you find her?" "Mama, this is Karim," Sophia interjected excitedly. "He gave me hot chocolate and let Mr. Buttons sleep on a fancy pillow." Elena straightened, her eyes narrowing. "Thank you for helping my daughter, but I found her alone in the rain yesterday," Karim interrupted, suddenly defensive under her scrutiny. "You left her by herself?" Elena's cheeks flushed with anger and embarrassment. "You think I had a choice? My babysitter never showed up, and if I don't open my stall, we don't eat. I got trapped across town when the streets flooded. I spent the night searching everywhere for her." The raw emotion in her voice caught Karim off guard. This wasn't the grateful response he'd expected for his good deed. "I didn't mean to imply," he began. "You did exactly that," Elena cut him off. "Men like you always do. You have no idea what it's like to struggle every day just to survive." Her words struck deeper than Karim wanted to admit. Despite his wealth, he recognized the steel in her spine, the same determination that had driven him to escape poverty. This woman wasn't looking for handouts or sympathy. She was fighting for her daughter's future with everything she had. "You're right," he conceded, surprising both Elena and himself. "I apologize." Elena's expression softened slightly, though wariness remained in her eyes. "Thank you for taking care of Sophia. I don't know how I can repay you." "No repayment necessary," Karim replied, inexplicably reluctant to leave. He pulled out a business card and handed it to her. "If you ever need anything." Elena took the card without looking at it, her pride evident in the set of her shoulders. "We'll be fine. We always are." As Karim walked away, Sophia's voice called after him, "Bye, Mr. Karim, thank you for the hot chocolate." He raised a hand in acknowledgement without turning back, yet found himself unable to shake the image of Elena's defiant eyes or the feeling that something significant had just happened, something that couldn't be measured in business deals or profit margins. Back in his penthouse, Karim tried to focus on work, but his thoughts kept drifting to the market, to Sophia's innocent trust and Elena's fierce independence. For the first time in years, the emptiness of his luxurious surroundings pressed in on him, highlighting a void he'd long ignored. 3 days later, against all logic, Karim found himself back at the Central Market, wandering through the crowded aisles until he spotted Elena's modest stall. He watched from a distance as she assisted customers, her smile genuine despite the obvious fatigue in her movements. Sophia sat nearby, carefully arranging small candles in rainbow order. When Sophia spotted him, her face lit up. "Mr. Karim, you came back!" Elena turned, surprise and confusion crossing her features as their eyes met across the bustling marketplace. And in that moment, Karim realized that despite all his worldly success, he had never felt more uncertain or more alive than he did now, standing at the threshold of something entirely new and unexplored. "You're back," Elena stated flatly, crossing her arms as she approached Karim. Her wary expression contrasted sharply with Sophia's excitement. "I had business nearby," Karim lied smoothly, though he wasn't entirely sure why he'd returned. Something about this small family had lodged in his mind, refusing to be dismissed. Sophia tugged at his sleeve. "Do you want to see my special boxes? Mama lets me decorate the small ones." Before Karim could respond, Elena interjected, "Sophia, Mr. Al-Fayed is very busy. He was just leaving." "Actually," Karim found himself saying, "I'd love to see them." Elena's eyes narrowed suspiciously, but she stepped aside as Sophia eagerly pulled Karim toward a collection of tiny wooden boxes adorned with childish paintings of flowers and stars. "This one took me 3 whole days," Sophia proclaimed proudly, holding up a box decorated with uneven sunflowers. "Impressive craftsmanship," Karim replied seriously. earning a giggle from Sophia and a reluctant half-smile from Elena. As Sophia chattered away, Karim observed the modest stall, the carefully arranged merchandise, the hand-lettered price tags, the worn edges of the display table. Everything spoke of diligence and care despite limited resources. His gaze shifted to Elena, who was helping an elderly customer select candles while keeping a watchful eye on her daughter and their unexpected visitor. "Your mother is very talented," Karim remarked to Sophia, genuinely impressed by the intricate carvings on the larger boxes. "She's the best boxmaker in the whole market," Sophia declared with absolute certainty. "And she makes the prettiest candles too. They smell like flowers and happiness." When the elderly customer departed, Elena approached them, her expression guarded. "Thank you for the compliment, but I'm sure you've seen much finer craftsmanship in your travels." "Quality isn't always about the most expensive materials," Karim replied, surprising himself with his sincerity. "These show real artistry." A flicker of genuine pleasure crossed Elena's face before her walls went back up. "What do you really want, Mr. Al-Fayed? Men like you don't frequent markets like this without reason." The directness of her question caught him off guard. What did he want? He'd built his life around accumulating wealth and power, yet here he stood in a humble market stall, strangely reluctant to leave. "Perhaps I'm simply interested in supporting the local artisans," he offered with a half-smile. Elena's skeptical expression made it clear she wasn't buying it. "There are galleries downtown full of artisans catering to people like you. Try again." Their standoff was interrupted by a commotion several stalls away. A group of men in expensive suits were examining the market's infrastructure with clipboards and cameras. "Not again," Elena muttered, her face darkening. "What's happening?" Karim asked, following her gaze. "Development vultures," she replied bitterly. "They've been circling for months. This market has stood for generations, but apparently now it's prime real estate for luxury condos or whatever." Karim felt an uncomfortable twinge as he recognized the logo on the men's clipboards. Meridian Properties, a company his investment firm had recently acquired a significant stake in. "Mama says we might have to move our stall again," Sophia said quietly, hugging Mr. Buttons to her chest. "But I don't want to. Everyone knows where to find us here." Elena crouched down to Sophia's level. "Don't worry, Mija. Remember what I always tell you. We are strong like oak trees." Sophia finished. "Our roots grow deep no matter where we're planted." The tenderness between mother and daughter stirred something long dormant in Karim's chest. Before he could examine the feeling, one of the suits approached Elena's stall. "Ms. Vasquez, right?" The man barely glanced at her merchandise. "Just following up on the offer. The deadline for accepting is coming up next week." "And my answer is still no," Elena replied firmly, "as I've told your colleagues repeatedly." The man sighed dramatically. "You're only making this harder on yourself. Everyone else is being reasonable." Karim stepped forward, suddenly irritated by the man's condescending tone. "Is there a problem here?" The suited man turned, annoyance flashing across his face until he recognized Karim. His expression immediately transformed to deferential panic. "Mr. Al-Fayed, I had no idea you were... we weren't expecting..." "Evidently," Karim replied, coolly. "Who are you?" "James Wilkins, sir. Junior Acquisitions at Meridian. I was just explaining to Ms. Vasquez the benefits of our revitalization project." Elena looked between them, realization dawning on her face. "You know each other." It wasn't a question, and the accusation in her voice was unmistakable. "Ms. Vasquez is a personal friend," Karim stated, fixing Wilkins with a pointed stare. "I'd appreciate if Meridian would respect her decision, whatever it may be." Wilkins backpedaled quickly. "Of course, sir, absolutely. We'll circle back at a more convenient time." After Wilkins scurried away, Elena turned to Karim, her eyes flashing with renewed suspicion and anger. "A personal friend? Is that what this has been about? Softening me up so I'd sell? Was finding Sophia just convenient timing?" "Elena, I had no idea." "It's Ms. Vasquez to you," she snapped. "And save your explanations. I should have known better than to think someone like you would help without an angle." Sophia looked between them, her expression confused and concerned. "Mama, why are you mad at Mr. Karim?" Elena took a deep breath, visibly trying to control her emotions for her daughter's sake. "It's complicated, Mija. Adult things." "But Mr. Karim is nice," Sophia insisted. "He saved me from the rain and didn't even get mad when I spilled hot chocolate on his fancy couch." Despite her anger, Elena's lips twitched at this revelation. "You spilled chocolate on his couch?" Sophia nodded solemnly. "It was an accident. He said it was just a thing and things don't matter as much as people." Elena's gaze returned to Karim, reassessing. "Did you really say that?" "I did," Karim admitted, "and I meant it. Elena, Ms. Vasquez, I genuinely had no knowledge of Meridian's specific projects here. My firm has investments in hundreds of companies." She studied him for a long moment, weighing his sincerity. "Even if that's true, we're clearly from different worlds, Mr. Al-Fayed. I appreciate your help with Sophia, but we don't need charity or complications." The dismissal stung more than it should have. Not all connections have to be transactional. "In my experience, with men of your status, they always are," Elena replied, her voice softening slightly despite her words. "Thank you again for helping Sophia, but please, don't come back. It's confusing for her." Karim wanted to argue but recognized the wisdom in her boundaries. With a respectful nod, he turned to leave, but Sophia darted forward and wrapped her arms around his legs. "Will you visit again sometime?" she asked hopefully. Caught between Sophia's innocent question and Elena's protective stance, Karim chose his words carefully. "That would be up to your mother, Sophia." He left the market with mixed emotions, troubled by the Meridian connection and Elena's justified suspicion, yet unable to dismiss the pull he felt toward them. Back in his office, Karim immediately requested all files related to Meridian's central market project. What he discovered disturbed him deeply. The revitalization plan would effectively price out all existing vendors, replacing a vibrant cultural landmark with upscale retail and luxury apartments. The community impact assessment was superficial at best, deliberately overlooking the livelihoods at stake. For the first time in his career, Karim found himself questioning the human cost behind the profit margins. He'd always viewed business as separate from personal concerns, but now Sophia's worried face and Elena's fierce determination to protect her world kept intruding on his thoughts. 3 weeks passed without Karim returning to the market, though not without consequence. He quietly had his team delay Meridian's project pending further market analysis, buying time while he considered his next move. Then came the call that changed everything. "Mr. Al-Fayed," Elena's voice on the phone was strained, vulnerable, in a way he hadn't heard before. "Elena, what's wrong?" "It's Sophia," she said, her voice breaking. "She's very ill, high fever, struggling to breathe. We're at Memorial Hospital, but the wait is—" She paused, clearly fighting for composure. "I wouldn't call if there were any other option." "I'm on my way," Karim responded instantly, already signaling his driver. "Which entrance?" "Emergency department, but—" "20 minutes, he promised, ending the call. The hospital waiting room was overcrowded, patients lining the walls in various states of distress. Karim spotted Elena immediately, her face pale with exhaustion and worry as she cradled a listless Sophia against her chest. The little girl's normally vibrant presence was diminished, her breathing labored and her cheeks flushed with fever. When Elena saw him, the relief in her eyes transcended all previous barriers between them. "Thank you for coming," she whispered as he approached. "How long have you been waiting?" he asked, taking in Sophia's concerning condition. 4 hours, Elena replied, desperation edging her voice. "They keep saying it will be soon, but more. Urgent cases keep coming in." Without hesitation, Karim approached the reception desk. Within 15 minutes, through a combination of his influence, sizable donations, and quiet insistence, Sophia was being examined by the hospital's chief pediatrician. The diagnosis was severe pneumonia, requiring immediate intervention. As Sophia was wheeled away for treatment, Elena's composure finally cracked. Karim found himself wrapping an arm around her shoulders as she trembled with fear and exhaustion. "She'll receive the best care possible," he assured her. "I promise." Elena nodded, too worn down to maintain her usual defenses. "I've never seen her this sick before. She's always been so strong, even as a baby." They settled into the private waiting room Karim had arranged, the awkward silence eventually giving way to quiet conversation. As the hours passed, Elena gradually shared fragments of her life story: her immigration from Venezuela at 19, the relationship that had left her pregnant and alone, her determination to build a stable life for her daughter despite overwhelming odds. "Sophia's father left before she was born," Elena explained, staring into her untouched coffee. "He said he wasn't ready for responsibility," as if I was. "You've done remarkably well," Karim observed. "Sophia is a wonderful child." A ghost of a smile touched Elena's lips. "She is, isn't she? Sometimes I look at her and can't believe she's mine. So full of joy despite everything." She glanced at him curiously. "Do you have children?" Karim shook his head. "No. My work always took precedence." "And now?" The simple question unsettled him. "Now, I'm not sure. Until recently, I thought I had everything figured out." Elena studied him with unexpected perception. "Something's changed." "Yes," Karim admitted, unable to articulate exactly what that change was, only that it had begun the moment he'd spotted a small figure huddled in the rain. The doctor's arrival interrupted their conversation. Sophia's condition was serious but responding to treatment. She would need to remain hospitalized for at least a week, followed by careful monitoring during recovery. As they stood outside Sophia's room, watching through the window as nurses adjusted IV lines and monitoring equipment, Elena turned to Karim with tear-filled eyes. "I can't afford this," she whispered, the admission clearly painful. "The private room, the specialists—" "It's taken care of," Karim stated simply. Elena stiffened. "I won't accept charity." "It's not charity," Karim replied, searching for words to explain feelings he was only beginning to understand himself. "It's investment in something that matters." Their gazes held for a long moment, something unspoken passing between them that neither was ready to acknowledge. As dawn broke over the hospital skyline, they sat together beside Sophia's bed, two people from vastly different worlds, finding unexpected common ground in their concern for one small precious life. Sophia's recovery transformed the relationship between Karim and Elena in ways neither had anticipated. The week in the hospital had broken down walls that might otherwise have taken months to dismantle. Keeping vigil together, sharing takeout, dinners in the hushed quiet of Sophia's room, they'd gradually revealed parts of themselves rarely shown to others. "Why the market?" Karim asked one evening as they watched Sophia sleep peacefully, her condition finally stabilized. "With your artistic talent, you could work anywhere." Elena traced the edge of her paper coffee cup. "The market was the first place that felt like home after I arrived here. Mrs. Gutierrez, she had the tamale stand back then. She looked after Sophia when she was a baby so I could work. Mr. Chen taught me English during slow afternoons. The Rodriguez brothers helped me build my first display rack." She smiled at the memories. "It's not just where I work, it's my community." For someone who had conducted business across 6 continents, Karim realized he'd never truly belonged anywhere. His penthouse could be in any major city. His offices were interchangeable glass, hand-steel monuments to success without personality or heart. When Sophia was finally released, Karim insisted on driving them home. Elena's resistance had softened, though her independence remained intact. "Just until she's fully recovered," Elena conceded, when Karim offered financial assistance. "And I'm keeping track of every penny to repay you." Karim knew better than to argue. Instead, he focused his attention on Sophia, who delighted in his daily visits, each one bringing new books or art supplies for her convalescence. Their apartment surprised him, not with its modest size or simple furnishings, but with how unmistakably it felt like a home. Colorful throws brightened second-hand furniture. Walls displayed Sophia's artwork alongside Elena's exquisite wood carvings. Potted plants thrived on every windowsill, Against his will, Karim found himself comparing it to his sterile penthouse, with its designer furniture that no one ever really sat on. One afternoon, as Elena prepared dinner and Sophia napped, Karim found himself examining photos arranged on a bookshelf. Elena graduating from community college with Sophia as a toddler on her hip. The two of them at the beach building sandcastles. Sophia's first day of school. "That was a proud day," Elena said quietly, coming to stand beside him. "I worked double shifts for months to afford that private school uniform." "You've given her an extraordinary life," Karim observed. Elena smiled wryly. "Not extraordinary by your standards, I'm sure." "By any standards," he corrected gently. "She's happy, secure, and loved. Many children with every material advantage can't claim that." Something in his tone made Elena study him more closely. "You sound like you speak from experience." Karim rarely discussed his childhood, but found himself sharing with Elena what few others knew. "My father built his business from nothing. By the time I was in high school, we had wealth, but before that..." He paused, memories surfacing of cramped apartments and his mother's worried face when bills arrived. "Let's just say I understand sacrifice." As Sophia regained her strength, Karim found more reasons to remain involved in their lives. He provided a tutor to help Sophia catch up on missed schoolwork, which led to dinners with Elena to discuss her progress, which somehow evolved into weekend outings to museums and parks. Despite her initial wariness, Elena gradually allowed Karim deeper into their world. Her boundaries remained clear. She insisted on cooking when he visited, refused extravagant gifts, and maintained her independence. But the walls between them steadily lowered. For Karim, these simple experiences awakened something long dormant. Business calls were increasingly delegated to assistants, investment decisions that once consumed his. Thoughts became secondary to Sophia's excited retellings of school adventures, or Elena's quiet observations about her daughter's development. "You're different with them," Marcos, Karim's longtime friend and business partner, noted after observing him with Elena and Sophia at a community festival. "More present." Karim couldn't deny it. "They see the world differently. It's refreshing." "It's more than that," Marcos pressed with knowing eyes. "You're falling for them, both of them." The observation, though accurate, complicated matters Karim wasn't ready to address. His growing feelings for Elena were undeniable, but expressing them risked the delicate balance they'd achieved. More importantly, there was Sophia to consider, the child who had begun looking at him with such trust that it terrified and humbled him simultaneously. The situation with Meridian Properties created another layer of complexity. Using his influence, Karim had managed to temporarily halt their market redevelopment plans, but corporate pressure was mounting to proceed with the lucrative project. One evening, after Sophia had gone to bed, Karim finally broached the subject with Elena. "I need to tell you something about the market situation," he began cautiously. Elena's expression immediately guarded. "What about it?" Karim explained. His connection to Meridian and his recent efforts to protect the market. Watching as Elena processed this information, her emotions shifting from surprise to wariness to cautious appreciation. "So you've been fighting your own company for us," she summarized when he finished. "It's the right thing to do," Karim replied simply, "but I can't hold them off indefinitely without an alternative plan." Elena paced the small living room, thinking, what would make financial sense while preserving what matters? Their conversation stretched late into the night as they explored possibilities, Elena's intimate knowledge of the market community complementing Karim's business expertise. By dawn, they had outlined a vision for revitalizing the market without displacing its heart and soul, upgrading infrastructure while preserving affordability, creating a destination that celebrated cultural heritage rather than erasing it. "This could work," Elena said, excitement building in her voice. "But will your investors see the value?" "Leave that to me," Karim assured her, already formulating his strategy. The following weeks saw Karim fully engaged in transforming their vision into reality. He assembled a team of community-minded architects and development experts, insisting that vendors like Elena participate in every planning session. Meridian executives were initially resistant, but Karim's business track record and substantial ownership stake eventually won their reluctant cooperation. Not everyone welcomed Karim's involvement. Several market vendors viewed him with suspicion, seeing only another wealthy outsider making promises. Elena found herself in the unexpected position of defending him to her skeptical neighbors. "He's different," she insisted to Mrs. Gutierrez, now elderly but still influential among the vendors. "He listens. He understands what makes this place special." "Men like him don't change their nature," Mrs. Gutierrez warned. "Be careful with your heart, Elena, and Sophia's." The warning struck closer to home than Elena wanted to admit. Despite her growing feelings for Karim, she maintained careful boundaries, particularly where Sophia was concerned. The little girl had already grown attached to him. Elena couldn't bear the thought of her daughter experiencing another abandonment. If Karim eventually lost interest and returned to his world of wealth and power. Karim sensed her hesitation but respected it, focusing instead on proving his commitment through actions rather than words. When mysterious accidents began occurring at vendors' stalls, merchandise damaged, electrical problems, minor fires, Karim personally financed security measures and insurance coverage. When he discovered that a rival development group was behind the sabotage, he leveraged his connections to ensure legal consequences, earning grudging respect from even his most vocal critics in the market community. Throughout it all, Sophia blossomed. Her health fully restored, she thrived with the expanded world Karim had helped introduce. Art classes, science museums, cultural experiences that Elena had always wanted for her but couldn't previously afford. Yet Elena ensured that Sophia's roots remained grounded in their community, maintaining their modest lifestyle and regular routines. "Why doesn't Mr. Karim stay with us?" Sophia asked innocently one night as Elena tucked her into bed. "He looks sad when he has to leave." Elena smoothed Sophia's hair, buying time to formulate an appropriate response. "Mr. Karim has his own home, Mija, but he smiles more when he's here," Sophia persisted with a child's perception. "And you do, too, Mama." The observation lingered with Elena long after Sophia fell asleep. She found herself standing at the window, watching the city lights and reflecting on how profoundly her perspective had shifted. 6 months ago, she'd viewed Karim as the embodiment of everything she distrusted: privilege, power, presumption. Now, her phone chimed with a message from him. "Board approved the revised market plan today. We won." Elena smiled at the "we," knowing how hard Karim had fought for this outcome, not just for her but for an entire community he'd come to value. The victory celebration at the market 2 days later cemented his transformation in the eyes of the vendors. Once viewed with suspicion, Karim was now embraced as a champion who had used his influence to protect rather than exploit. As the festivities wound down, Elena found Karim sitting alone on a bench, watching Sophia dance with the Rodriguez grandchildren to music from a local band. "Penny for your thoughts," Elena said, sitting beside him. Karim's expression was contemplative. "I was just thinking about value. All my life, I've measured it in assets, market share, return on investment. But watching them," he nodded toward the dancing children, "I realize I've been using the wrong metrics." "It's never too late to recalibrate," Elena offered softly. Their eyes met and the unspoken connection between them intensified. Before either could speak, Sophia ran up, breathless and beaming. "Come dance with us," she pleaded, tugging at both their hands. As they joined the celebration, moving together amid the community that had become so important to them all, Karim realized that something fundamental had shifted within him. The man who had once driven past problems that weren't his concern now found himself deeply invested in the welfare of an entire community, in the dreams of a remarkable woman, and in the future of a child who had somehow claimed a place in his heart. Later that night, walking Elena and Sophia home under a canopy of stars, Karim found himself at a crossroads. The market project was secured, his professional obligation fulfilled. Logic dictated a return to his previous life, yet the thought left him hollow. At their door, Sophia hugged him tightly, before Elena ushered her inside to prepare for bed. Left alone in the hallway, Karim and Elena faced each other, the weight of unspoken feelings between them. "So what happens now?" Elena asked quietly. "That depends," Karim replied, his customary confidence giving way to genuine vulnerability, "on whether there's a place for me in your lives beyond this project." Elena studied him for a long moment. "Sophia's already attached. To you. If this is temporary—" "It's not," Karim interrupted with quiet certainty. "Not for me." The admission hung between them, honest and unadorned. Elena's eyes reflected caution battling with hope. "I need time," she finally said. "This isn't just about us." Understanding the precious responsibility that shaped her every decision. "Wait," he promised. "For as long as it takes." As he walked away, Karim felt lighter despite the uncertainty. For the first time in his life, he was pursuing something that couldn't be bought, negotiated, or acquired through strategic maneuvering, something that required patience, vulnerability, and faith. Back in his penthouse, surrounded by the trappings of success that had once defined him, Karim made a decision. The transformation that had begun with a small act of kindness on a rainy night was far from complete, but its direction was now clear. Whatever the future held with Elena and Sophia, he would no longer measure his worth by the wealth he accumulated, but by the lives he touched and the community he helped build. The revitalized Central Market opened on a perfect spring morning, sunlight streaming through the newly installed skylights and illuminating the transformed space. Traditional architecture had been preserved and enhanced, modern amenities integrated thoughtfully. Most importantly, the soul of the place remained intact, the same vibrant community now housed in a space that would endure for generations. Elena stood at her expanded stall, watching as visitors marveled at the market's transformation. Her wood carvings and candles were now displayed in custom cabinetry with proper lighting, yet she'd maintained the warm, accessible atmosphere that had always defined her business. "It's beautiful, Mama," Sophia exclaimed, twirling in the small demonstration area where Elena now offered carving workshops. "And look, you can see Mrs. Gutierrez's tamale stand from here." Elena smiled, grateful that familiar neighbors surrounded them despite the changes. The market's reopening represented more than a business success. It symbolized what could happen when different perspectives united around a shared vision. Karim approached from across the main aisle, looking uncharacteristically nervous. Though impeccably dressed as always, there was a new approachability about him, something that had evolved gradually over the past months as he'd worked alongside the vendors, learning their stories and earning their trust. "Well?" he asked, gesturing around. "Final verdict?" Elena took a moment before answering, wanting him to understand the significance of what he'd accomplished. "You kept your promise. It's still our market, just better." Relief washed over his features. "The true test will be 6 months from now, when we see if it's financially sustainable while keeping vendor costs affordable." Always the businessman, Elena teased, though she'd come to respect his practical approach. His commitment to making the project work long-term had proven more meaningful than grand gestures or empty promises. Sophia tugged at Karim's hand. "Can we show him now, Mama?" Elena nodded, and Sophia disappeared behind the counter, returning with a carved wooden box more intricate than any Elena had previously created. Inlaid with different woods in geometric patterns inspired by both Latin American and Middle Eastern designs, it represented hundreds of hours of painstaking work. "We made this for you," Sophia announced proudly. "Mama did the hard parts, but I helped with the sanding and picking the colors." Karim accepted the gift with visible emotion, running his fingers over the detailed inlay. When he opened it, the interior revealed compartments lined with hand-woven fabric and a small card in Sophia's handwriting. "For Mr. Karim's important treasures." "This is—" he began, struggling to find adequate words. "No one has ever made me something like this. We wanted to thank you," Elena explained softly, not just for the market, but for everything. The moment stretched between them, weighted with unspoken feelings. Over the months since the market project began, their connection had deepened beyond friendship, yet Elena had maintained careful boundaries. Between Sophia's well-being, her business responsibilities, and lingering fears about the vast differences in their worlds, she'd kept Karim at an emotional arm's length, despite their growing closeness. "Mama, can I go see the music at the fountain?" Sophia interrupted, pointing toward the central plaza where a string quartet was setting up. "Stay where I can see you," Elena cautioned, watching as Sophia skipped away. Alone with Karim, Elena felt the familiar tension, the pull toward him battling against her protective instincts. "So," she said, "what happens now that the project is complete, back to global domination?" The teasing question held a serious undercurrent. Despite all they'd shared, Elena still feared that once the challenge was conquered, Karim would return to his previous life, leaving them with memories and a renovated market. Karim set the box down carefully and met her gaze directly. "I've been wanting to talk to you about that. I've made some decisions." Elena braced herself. "What kind of decisions?" "I'm restructuring my business interests," he explained, "stepping back from daily operations at Al Fayed International to focus on community development projects, starting with expanding this market model to other neighborhoods." Surprise rendered Elena momentarily speechless. When she'd met Karim, his corporate identity had seemed inseparable from who he was. "That's a significant change." "I've never been happier or more fulfilled than I've been these past months," Karim admitted. "Working on something meaningful, watching it improve people's lives, it's changed my perspective on everything." Elena studied him, recognizing the authenticity in his words. The transformation she'd witnessed hadn't been superficial or temporary. It had reached the core of who he was. "And there's something else," Karim continued, his usual confidence giving way to vulnerability. "Something more personal." Elena's heart quickened. "Karim, please, let me finish before I lose my nerve," he requested gently. "Elena, I understand your caution. I respect how fiercely you protect Sophia and the life you've built. But these months with both of you have shown me what truly matters, and I don't want to return to an empty existence, no matter how financially successful." He reached for her hands, and Elena allowed him to take them, her own reservations wavering, in the face of his sincerity. "I'm not asking for immediate answers," Karim continued. "I know you need time and Sophia needs stability, but I want you to know that I'm committed to being part of your lives in whatever way you'll allow." The words Elena had both longed for and feared hung between them. Before she could respond, commotion erupted near the fountain. They turned to see water spraying in unexpected directions as children scattered, laughing. "Sophia!" Elena called, scanning the crowd anxiously. "There," Karim pointed toward a soaking wet Sophia, who was giggling uncontrollably, alongside the Rodriguez children. As they approached, the fountain malfunction became apparent. Someone had adjusted the pressure incorrectly during installation, creating an impromptu splash zone that delighted the children but alarmed their parents. "Mama!" "Mr. Karim, did you see?" Sophia exclaimed, water dripping from her hair. "It was like magic." "It was like someone's getting fired," Karim muttered, though his expression remained amused as he signaled for maintenance staff. Elena couldn't help laughing at the chaos, especially when she noticed distinguished market board members and city officials also caught in the spray. "So much for the perfect opening." Karim shrugged, surprising her. "Perfection is overrated. This," he gestured to the joyful disorder around them, "this is real life." The man who once would have been mortified by such disruption to his carefully orchestrated plans now embraced the unexpected moment, even helping to distribute towels to drenched visitors with good-natured apologies. As order gradually restored, Elena found herself watching Karim with Sophia, his patient answers to her excited questions, the gentle way he dried her hair with a towel, how naturally they moved together. The sight crystallized something Elena had been avoiding acknowledging. They had already become a family in all the ways that mattered. That evening, after the successful, if somewhat damp, opening day concluded, Karim joined them for dinner at their apartment, a now familiar ritual. Sophia recounted the fountain adventure for the dozenth time before finally succumbing to exhaustion. "Can Mr. Karim read my story tonight?" she asked hopefully, as Elena tucked her into bed. Elena glanced at Karim, who waited respectfully at the doorway. "If he doesn't mind." "I'd be honored," Karim replied, settling into the chair beside Sophia's bed and accepting the well-worn storybook. From the hallway, Elena listened as he read, his voice gentle and patient, even when Sophia interrupted with questions. When he finished, Sophia asked sleepily, "Are you going to live with us now?" Elena held her breath, heart pounding as she waited for his response. "That would be wonderful," Karim answered carefully. "But that's something your mother and I would need to decide together. What matters most is that I'll always be here for both of you, no matter what." "Promise?" Sophia murmured, already drifting toward sleep. "I promise," Karim affirmed, his voice carrying the weight of absolute commitment. When he emerged from the bedroom, Elena was waiting in the living room, her decision made. The months of caution had been necessary, for Sophia's sake, for her own healing, for confirming that Karim's transformation was genuine. But now, continuing to hold him at a distance felt like denying what they all needed. "Did you mean what you said to her?" Elena asked quietly, "about always being here?" Karim met her gaze steadily. "Every word. I know our worlds were different, Elena, but you and Sophia have become my world now." Elena took a deep breath. "I've been afraid," she admitted. "Afraid of trusting, afraid of disrupting the stability I've worked so hard to create for Sophia, afraid that our differences would eventually matter more than our connection." "And now?" Karim asked, hope and uncertainty mingling in his expression. "Now I'm more afraid of letting fear rob us all of something precious," Elena replied, closing the distance between them. "I can't promise it will be easy. I'm still independent, still stubborn, still perfect," Karim interrupted softly, reaching for her hands. "I don't want easy, Elena. I want real. I want you and Sophia, challenges and all." The kiss they shared felt like both a culmination and a beginning, tender yet passionate, familiar yet thrilling with possibility. When they finally parted, Elena rested her forehead against his. "Sophia will be ecstatic," she murmured with a small laugh. "She's been dropping hints for months." "Smart kid," Karim replied, smiling. "Takes after her mother." The following months brought adjustments as they carefully merged their lives. True to his word, Karim scaled back his corporate responsibilities to focus on community development, starting with programs at the market to support young entrepreneurs from underprivileged backgrounds. Elena maintained her independence, insisting they take things slowly for Sophia's sake. Karim respected her boundaries, demonstrating his commitment through consistent presence rather than grand gestures. When he finally proposed moving in together, it was with the purchase of a modest home near the market, large enough for comfort, but deliberately not ostentatious. "Are you sure this is enough for you?" Elena asked as they toured the property. "It's beautiful, but it's not exactly what you're used to." Karim's response was to pull her close. "Home isn't about square footage or amenities, Elena. It's about where you and Sophia are." The day they moved in, the entire market community arrived to help. Mrs. Gutierrez bringing tamales, the Rodriguez brothers assembling furniture, Mr. Chen organizing the kitchen with military precision. Watching their worlds blend so seamlessly, Elena felt the last of her reservations dissolve. That night, with Sophia finally asleep in her new bedroom surrounded by treasured possessions from both their previous homes, Elena joined Karim on the porch swing he'd installed as a surprise. "Happy?" he asked, arm around her shoulders as they gazed at stars visible from their new neighborhood in a way they hadn't been from either his downtown penthouse or her former apartment. "More than I thought possible," Elena admitted, leaning into him. "Though I still can't quite believe this is real sometimes." "Which part?" Karim asked. "That a stubborn, independent craftsman who once told me to stay away from her stall agreed to share her life with me?" or that I finally found what I'd been searching for all along without realizing it. Elena smiled. Both. We took such different paths to get here. But they led to the same place, Karim observed, taking her hand, and that's what matters. As they sat together, plans and dreams mingling in their conversation, Elena reflected on the journey that had brought them together. From a chance encounter on a rainy night to building a shared future, their story had unfolded in ways neither could have predicted. The cynical businessman who once drove past others' problems had become a man who fought for a community not originally his own. The fiercely independent single mother who trusted no one had opened her heart to possibilities she'd long since abandoned. And at the center of it all, a child's simple need for shelter from a storm had catalyzed transformations neither adult could have imagined. 6 months later, on a perfect autumn afternoon, the central plaza of the market was transformed once again, this time for a celebration. Vendors and community members gathered alongside Karim's business associates as Elena walked toward him, radiant in a handcrafted dress that blended her Venezuelan heritage with subtle Middle Eastern elements. Sophia preceded her, scattering flower, petals and beaming with joy, Mr. Buttons tucked securely in the basket she carried. When Elena reached Karim, Sophia moved to stand between them, completing the circle they'd formed in life, long before making it official. As they exchanged vows, promises, of partnership, respect and enduring love, the market that had brought them together bore witness. The same community that had once viewed their connection with skepticism now celebrated the family they had become. Later, as twilight settled over the reception, Elena found Karim watching Sophia dance with her friends, his expression one of profound contentment. "No regrets?" she asked, slipping her hand into his. "About the simpler life?" Karim turned to her, his eyes reflecting certainty that needed no words. "The only regret I could ever have would be not stopping that night in the rain." As they joined Sophia on the dance floor, moving together as the family they had become, the path ahead stretched before them, not without challenges, but rich with the promise of a shared journey navigated with love, respect, and the courage to bridge different worlds. The once empty penthouse now housed Karim's foundation for market preservation and community development. Elena's craftsmanship reached new audiences through programs teaching traditional skills to at-risk youth. Sophia thrived, secure in the knowledge that she was loved unconditionally by both her fierce, independent mother and the man who had once been a stranger, but now was simply Dad. And the market that had been the backdrop for their beginning continued to flourish, a vibrant testament to what becomes possible when hearts open, perspectives expand, and love transforms not just individuals, but entire communities. As night fell and lanterns illuminated the celebration, Elena gazed at her new husband and daughter, marveling at how a single moment of kindness during a storm had altered the course of all their lives, creating ripples that would continue long into the future they would build together. End of story. Dear listeners, we hope the journey of Karim, Elena and Sophia has touched your hearts. Their story reminds us that connections can form in the most unexpected moments, and that true transformation happens when we open ourselves to new possibilities. For more emotional stories like this one, we've created a special playlist featuring similar tales of unexpected love and family bonds. Find it by clicking on the link to your left. If this story resonated with you, please subscribe to our channel and give this video a thumbs up. Your support helps us continue creating these meaningful narratives that explore life's complexities. We release new stories daily, each one crafted to inspire and move you. What was your favorite moment from Karim and Elena's journey? Share your thoughts in the comments below. We read every single one and love connecting with our community of listeners. Until our next story, remember that sometimes the most beautiful beginnings start with a simple act of kindness.